looking dapper today, by the way. Is that because
Thanks.
of all the hits you've been getting on your clips you've been doing?
No, I just like a slouch last episode. I just wore a long sleeve t-shirt. What are you wearing? I can't see.
Apparently that's what the fans are calling for, Derek. A little bit of a relaxed look.
Yeah, right.
I want to talk about a rocket ship here that's going off in an individual stock, and that's Eli Lilly. And I had brought this to your attention a couple months ago because I had heard some discussion about one of the new drugs that Eli Lilly is working on. So for those of you who don't know, Eli Lilly is a pharmaceutical company, and it's actually, I just took a look at the spider healthcare sector. It's the number 2 holding. In the past, it has been number 1, I believe, but it's the number 2 holding in the healthcare sector, XLV. And a little background on this company. Eli Lilly's been around for a very, very long time. In fact, it was amongst the first in the distribution of the polio vaccine, and also was the first commercial manufacturer of penicillin as well. So it's been fighting some drugs for a very, very long time.
So, and that's funny because the reason you're excited about it is because their new weight loss drug.
I'm excited for a couple of reasons. So when I started following Eli Lilly a little bit more closely, analysts have their different opinion. One analyst said they expected Eli Lilly to double revenue in the next 5 years, which if you look at the revenue pace they're on, that's actually not taking place right now. They're growing the revenue, but it's not at that clip that analyst had forecasted.
It's a huge company. Like, to make a move like that would be pretty monumental.
Yes, and foreshadowing, I'm going to give you a reason why that might actually be possible. But right now, it's just a steadily growing pharmaceutical company, well established. It has drugs in, if you look at a pharmaceutical company, people sometimes ask, well, you have these, people who are suffering from these rare diseases out there. Why aren't the pharmaceutical companies helping those? Why aren't they doing research for those? And that's unfortunately because there's no money behind it, right? And so the pharmaceutical companies typically go for the drugs that a lot of people suffer from. So that would be cancer, that would be diabetes, that would be depression, things of that nature where a large portion of the population suffers from those diseases. You're going to get pharmaceutical companies that pile in and try to find a solution so they can sell the drug. And Eli Lilly is no different. If you look at what they do, they have diabetes drugs. They have drugs for treating depression. 2 drugs, though, that are in they're not yet FDA approved. They're still going through their testing period. One of them, they just released some information on a couple of days ago as far as the update. It's in phase 3 testing. And I'm going to butcher the name a little bit here, but the drug is called donanemab. I'm totally butchering this. But you don't need to necessarily know the drug. What you need to know is what it's for. It's for Alzheimer's. Again, another disease. We have an aging population. A lot of Americans are suffering, a lot of people around the world, because Eli Lilly is a global company. It distributes its products globally, suffer from Alzheimer's. And this drug in the phase 3 testing showed a 40% less decline in the ability of patients who were in their test phases who had Alzheimer's, had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, were taking this drug, 40% less decline for everyday activities. So managing your finances, holding conversations, driving. And for anybody who's had family members who have suffered from that disease, it's terrible to watch unfold. And if we can slow that process down by 40%, that's a pretty significant
that's a big drop.
Success story. Yeah.
I mean, if it was 10%, that would be a huge victory.
Yeah. So we're going to call it donanemab. Close enough.
Close enough.
So the other one they have here is, I believe it's tirzepatide, which is an obesity drug. And this is the one that caught my attention because an obesity drug is the holy grail of pharmaceuticals, especially in the United States where we tend to have weight problems here, right?
Increasingly a global problem.
Yes, absolutely. Human beings have been looking for a take a pill and you're good solution for weight loss, right? there are some people obviously out there. I'm not making light of the situation. There are people who struggle with weight, and they do their best. They try the diets, they try the exercise, and for some people, apparently that doesn't work.
Seed oils. You gotta stop eating seed oils.
I would agree. There's a lot of our problem is in the quote unquote food that we eat, right? What we classify as food. But this drug that Eli Lilly is working on, it's an obesity drug, is showing in its test patients, they lost up to 16% of their body weight on this, whereas the placebo group lost somewhere around 7 pounds to no weight loss on this. So again, significant increase in the ability to lose weight through this drug, and they are
that was 16. You said
16% of your body weight.
16%. Oh wow, yeah. That is a pretty good drop.
Not pounds, 16% of your body weight.
I was going to say 16 pounds is pretty good, but 16%, that's a huge drop.
That's a huge drop, and of course, the people that they are testing this on are people who probably have that much weight to lose or more. They're obese.
Yeah. So if I took that, I'm pretty lean right now. If I took that, I'd probably just wither away.
Shrivel up and blow away.
Yeah.
But you can imagine it doesn't take somebody who is a pharmaceutical analyst to consider this. If we have an FDA-approved weight loss drug that actually works, now you have this drug prescribed for obesity, of course, heart disease, diabetes, sleep apnea, cholesterol, basically anything. If you think about all the diseases out there that people suffer from, how many of them are related to being overweight? And this would be a potential solution for that. So, if you could get too caught up in the analysts, what they're predicting with this drug, if it is approved, but look at the COVID vaccines, what they did over 2020-21. You're talking about a drug that actually potentially can be administered to more people globally around the world, and as an ongoing thing, right? We've had a little bit of a wane in the fear of the COVID-19 disease or virus, but obesity is an ongoing problem. So that analyst who said they think that Eli Lilly could double revenue in the next 5 years, that's one path in which that could potentially get there. Now, full disclosure, Derek, I am not in any shape or form telling people to run out there and buy this stock. I am an owner of this stock. As I said, it's the number 2 holding in the the healthcare sector, Spider healthcare sector. But this drug, I'll let you get into if you want. It's expensive.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I would say is like with the healthcare names, when people get excited, or it's like the same with like biotech companies too. Like sometimes they'll be really eager to share what is coming down the pipeline, and a lot of times that might not come to fruition, and then you could get burned if you put a significant portion of your portfolio into a bet like that. So it's like risk manage and stuff like that. But yeah, you sent it to me a while ago, probably pretty close to the beginning of the year. You were saying that this was one that you were looking at, and kudos to you because you made money on it. And I said, I didn't pull the trigger on it. But clearly, yeah, you were right. I just thought it was a little too expensive, and people are definitely pricing in the expectation of future earnings growth with the drugs that you're talking about. Sure. So if some of that stuff does come to fruition, yeah, that earnings multiple could definitely be justified. So right now it's trading at 64 times earnings, 13.71 times sales, that's pretty steep, and 700 times free cash flow. So it's definitely pretty expensive. A lot of that is, like I said, it's a baked-in assumption that earnings will continue to grow, even if we have some recession that comes to fruition at the back half of this year. And another thing that concerned me was they didn't raise the dividend this quarter, which there could be a lot of reasons for doing that. Just like the recession, for instance, they just want to start building a war chest and don't be super aggressive raising that dividend. But I'm just of the general belief right now, I think we're going to get a better opportunity to buy stocks later in the year, and I might look to pull the trigger. But so far, yeah, I've been dead wrong, and you've made a nice return on it.
Again, my caution for people to run out and buy the stock right now. It's run about 23%.
Yeah, 20% for the month. So it's ran away for sure.
Yeah, but something to maybe keep out in the hopper, keep your eye on. The thing about Eli Lilly, it's not It's not a company like Moderna in the sense that it's been around for a long time. I mean, Prozac.
It's huge. It's a big company.
Yes. Yep. If you look at some of the drugs that, the funny thing about drug companies are, we've talked about this before. I don't think you need to be a super in-tune investor to realize how much money is behind the pharmaceutical companies. And all you have to do is turn the television on, watch a football game, watch any event.
The news.
And every other commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial.
Yeah, that's only in the United States. Did you know that? I believe it's the United States and New Zealand are the only countries where it's legal to advertise for drugs on TV. Or I think maybe just drugs in general. That's, pretty crazy.
So, and this is another one I think too that I don't get very excited about the pharmaceutical companies. When I think about pharmaceutical companies, I don't necessarily think about
ethics.
This might sound bad. Yes, I don't really think about ethics.
Yeah.
But on the Dynamic Growth podcast, we are looking to enhance our own personal income and earning ability. And sometimes if you're an investor, you can look the other way if it doesn't bother you too much.
Yeah, I mean, we own XLV. You can kind of be ignorant and just own XLV and just not know all the bad stuff that those companies are doing. But I mean, it comes to a point where like you could probably make a moral case not to own every single corporation in the United States or every single corporation in the world. Like you go down the list, like how many people own Apple? Like if you have a retirement plan or if you have a 401k, you probably own Apple. And then there's ethics concerns with how they source the materials for the phones, how they build the phones and stuff like that. So you can make a justification or an ethical justification not to own anything. So I just think it's, if you're looking to maximize your own personal net worth, there is part of it that is, unless you just want to be like 100% gold or something, but even then you're like,
sure.
How are they mining the gold? So there's basically no way to invest where you can keep your hands completely clean. At least that's my personal belief.
That, and you can look at just like every human being has some good and bad to it, right? If we followed each other around with a camera 24 hours a day, we would probably see some things that we were not the best actions as human beings. But so think about the fact that distributor of penicillin, how many lives has penicillin saved? How many lives has the polio vaccine saved? So take the good with the bad. It's up to you whether it's an investable company or not. But I like it long term. It's very, very, very expensive right now, so don't run out and buy it right now. If you do run out and buy it, I would say 5-year time horizon.
Definitely.
Don't be checking the price every day.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that I would be coming to the defense of big pharma. Like we talk about all the time about how corrupt some of these like big, in quotation marks, big fill in the blank, big Wall Street, big pharma, big the military industrial complex. So I never thought I'd be coming to the defense of big pharma, but to say that everything big pharma does is bad, I think is a mischaracterization because they do legitimately create life-saving drugs. And then the incentives are just aligned to do so sometimes, and then sometimes the incentives are aligned to screw a lot of people over. But I mean, you can't say that every single thing that a pharmaceutical company does is bad. I don't think that's accurate.
All right, Derek, you are next up. What do you want to talk about?
We're recording at, I guess, 2:50 Eastern time. It's a little bit different for me. But the Federal Reserve just announced that they're going to raise rates by another 25 basis points. They removed the language that implies that they are going to continue raising rates. This seems like it is going to be the last one, or at least that's what everybody's expectation is. They've changed. We haven't listened to the press conference yet, but they in their press release they removed all the language about ongoing rate hikes. So, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, it takes me back to when this process started, which would have been March of 2022, right?
It's crazy. It feels like it's been going on forever,
Yeah. At that time, when these press conferences started to unfold and we would listen to them, Jerome Powell, to his credit, sounded like a broken record. He wasn't hopping around. He had the same message.
Mm-hmm.
And every time a reporter would say, well, how high are these rates going? And he would say, we are going to raise these rates to create a restrictive monetary policy. Mm-hmm. So that essentially a fancy way of saying we want to make things expensive so people aren't running out there and buying a lot of things and the prices eventually have to come back down.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at that, I think he's achieving that in many ways. I mean, you don't see houses selling as fast. You don't see cars flying off the lot quite as much. And actually, you're starting to see, in many cases, the prices of cars come down a little bit. I've got a good friend who's a really high volume car salesman, and that's kind of what he's saying. Is he's starting to see these prices come down. It used to be, the car didn't even hit the lot. It was sold before it hit the lot. And with interest rates and loans, what they are, I think you are starting to see that restrictive monetary policy, and I think we're starting to see it in the inflation number as it's coming down.
Yeah, so let's think about like what they're actually doing when they raise rates. Is they're basically making lending more expensive. So and so why would you want to make lending more expensive? So people borrow less, and then they are like companies are borrowing less to expand their business. Consumers are borrowing less. They're not going to buy the new house, buy the new car, like what you said. And then I think that the kind of all clear sign for Powell to stop is what's going on in the banking sector. Because, I mean, every single bank, if you're not JP Morgan, it seems like is like really being very conservative with their lending because they're scared of whether it's commercial real estate, whatever is spooking the banks is causing them to stop lending. And that's basically the ultimate goal of these rate hikes anyway. So if Powell sees that lending is drying up because banks are failing, he doesn't really have to keep pushing rates higher because, I mean, the private sector is doing that job for him. I think that's a big part of it. Because, like, as far as the inflation fight goes, I mean, we're still at 5%, or I think, are we at 4.9 now, year over year? I don't know. Yeah, so like the year over year numbers are muddy anyway because like we're judging off of a previous year of high inflation, but it's without a doubt that the inflation numbers are coming down. So, but they're not coming down to 2%. Like you said, he's a broken record. He's been very adamant that they won't stop until they get to 2%. So it's not clear that on that front he has enough info to stop. But I think with the private sector bank lending side of things, he does have that all clear sign to stop raising rates. I don't think that they're going to do another one going from here.
We'll see. I think. When somebody issues, we've talked about this in past podcasts, when I go out or you go out or anybody goes out and gets a loan for a vehicle, that loan's created and essentially creates more money into the system, doesn't it? And when that loan is paid off, it essentially dries up. It's pulling money from the system. So that's obviously another result of the raising the interest rates. If people are not going out there and getting new loans, and loans are being paid off, then that's pulling money from the system, which is what he wants to do. Obviously, he wants to pull capital from the markets. And on the investment side of things, we have talked about this. People are probably tired of hearing this. Looking at a risk-free return or a close to a risk-free return, it's now possible, especially with this new rate increase, you're going to be close to getting 5.5% on a 3-month T-bill after this is all said or done, or you're going to be getting 5% in a money market. And if you have a situation where the average retail investor is looking around and seeing banks failing, that doesn't necessarily make you want to run out and buy a bunch of risk assets, does it? So if I can park my money, yeah, you would think. If I can park my money in something that is giving me a 5.5% return for very minimal risk, that's pretty enticing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's like kind of the thesis for why stocks shouldn't be doing as well as they are. And especially to add one more variable into what you just said, stocks are like had a really good run up year to date. So it's you're getting a good risk-free return in a money market or again, always put that in quotation marks, risk-free. You're getting a good return on 3-month T-bills. You're getting a good return in money markets. And there's uncertainty in the back half of the year and stocks have run up year to date. There's not really a reason for retail investors or big institutional investors to like go out and take on a new position in Bitcoin, for instance, like something super risky or do something like super long duration. So that ultimately is the goal of these rate hikes, is because they know that the private sector will make these decisions of like, we're all going to get risk off. The banks are going to stop lending, stuff like that, et cetera.
And it appears to be working. I read somewhere that they can't issue T-bills fast enough right now because people are snatching them up.
Especially with the debt ceiling debate, like the Treasury literally can't. Like they're kind of capped at what they can do. And then Janet Yellen said that the U.S. Treasury is going to run out of money by like June 1st, which I mean, that sounds hyperbolic.
She said it could. It could.
Yeah, right. That sounds hyperbolic. But I mean, it's like there is a finite amount to that. So, I mean, I think that just expedites the process of them raising the debt ceiling. I don't think that there's any risk of the U.S. defaulting on any, even nominally or even in the short term. There's basically no probability that they're going to not make the coupon payments. And if you don't agree with me, there's somebody that is willing to take that bet with you. And if you're right, you would make a lot of money on that trade.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you want to bet that the U.S. is going to default, like, go ahead and you'll make a lot of money if you're right.
Anything else about the FOMC?
No, I don't think I had anything else.
This podcast is going to be a little bit of everything. I asked you a question earlier today, and I want to ask you that again so that you can share it, because I want to share mine as well. But dynamic growth, we get into a lot of things. We get mostly into the financial and economics, but obviously there's a personal side to that. Mm-hmm. So if I were to ask you a question, in your 23, 24 years of existence,
24,
what is the best advice you have ever received?
So when you asked me that question, like, I actually sat and thought about it for a little bit. So I don't think that, like, it's not like Spider-Man, like when Uncle Ben sat with him in the car and they're like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Because mine is.
Oh, really? Oh, there you go.
Yes,
yeah. That's cool.
No, go ahead.
So mine kind of ties into that. So one thing that, like, my dad always used to say to us is, like, lead by example. So it kind of, like, goes into that, where it's not something that's explicitly said. It's just actions kind of speak louder than words, and always live, and always basically that's it. Like, always let your actions speak louder than your words. And if you're going to ask somebody to do something for you, if you're in a leadership role, then you should be putting in twice the work that they are, or you're not going to get any respect in a leadership position. So I think that's a really good one. I also have another one, but we can go with yours first.
No, I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, in the sense that if you look at, what you say doesn't speak as much volumes as what you actually do.
For sure.
And if you look at the greatest leaders throughout history, the one that jumps to the top of my mind in the United States would be George Washington, right? George Washington has become almost a legend, a myth in many ways. Mm-hmm. But if you study some of the battles, and I'm a big American history buff, his generals would have to grab him and bring him back, because there would be times, the Battle of Monmouth was one of them, where he was attempting to charge to the front when his men were retreating, and he wanted to hold the line. He wanted to go out there in the line and fight, because that's who he was, right?
And that fires up, like, if you're in that leadership position, that's going to fire everybody up around you,
Absolutely. Here's the most indispensable man in the United States at the time, rushing to the front of the line to fight.
Yeah, right. For sure.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's a good illustration.
So mine, I actually want to talk about this more than maybe one episode, because I have a couple things that light bulb moments for me over my lifetime that it happened to me. And sometimes that light bulb didn't click on when I heard it or was given the advice, but in putting things in context years later, it was like, oh, I see what's going on here. The best piece of advice I have ever received, I've had a lot of people in my lives who have been very instrumental for helping me, get to where I'm at here. But when I was in high school, looking back, there was part of me that was very insecure. People who know me know that I have a little bit of a speech problem, in the sense that I have to really focus on slowing down my words. Otherwise, I mumble and I trip over words. You've heard it on the podcast a million different times. Came from a broken home. So there was a little bit of me that was not quite sure of himself. And my senior year, some people have heard the story, I ran for student president, and I won. And
nice,
within,
me too.
Yeah, well, within 5 minutes of winning, I conceded it, and I gave it to the runner-up. Okay. And I was packing my bags up, getting ready to leave for the day, and one of my teachers saw me in the hall, and he said, "Hey, Crosby, congratulations, you're going to make a great president." And I said, "Oh, I appreciate that, but I conceded." And what I expected to be his reaction didn't happen. So what I expected him to say was, "Oh, that's very humble of you," or "That's very gracious of you." But that's not what happened. His face turned red. I could see him clench his fists. I saw him take a breath because what he wanted to say to me, he took a moment to soften it a little bit. But he pulled me in his office, in his room, and he sat me down and he looked me in the eye. And that look would have been enough probably to have a lasting impression because it was a look of pure disappointment. And he had said, the question that he posed to me is, when are you going to let go of whatever it is that you're allowing to hold you back? And he sat there and looked at me for a while. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was uncomfortable and I wanted to leave and I just wanted to go home. But, years later, sitting in college, and then years later in the early part of my career, I would ask myself that question. What is it that you are allowing to hold you back? And when are you going to let that go? And all of us, you, me, everybody out there, we're all carrying some form of baggage, right? It could be the broken home. It could be insecurity. It could be maybe you have a disability, whatever that is. It's this mental picture that we have of ourselves that we're allowing to serve as an anchor. And 25 years later, I became much closer friends with this person. And I learned that here was a guy that in my mind was a symbol of all that was good, all that was respectable, all that you would want to be as a human being and as a man, treating other people. And he was from a broken home. He was adopted. He had a father who dealt with alcoholism for a long period of time. So this is baggage that he had carried with him in his life. And at some point in time, he had to set that baggage down and become the person that he eventually became, right? And I think that's all of us. I think that's all of us is we could do ourselves a favor by examining ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves, the stories of who we are. Maybe I say, hey, I'm from a middle-class family, so I'm only going to be a middle-class person. Or, my father worked this job, so that's the only job that I can work. And that's, of course, not true, right? We can become whoever we want to be. In many ways, we can become the story that we want to tell. So that was the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten.
That's powerful. That's a really cool story.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What else? You got another one here.
Oh, man. How do I? No, we got to end it. I can't follow that. No, there's no way I could follow it. Okay, we'll talk about it next week. Next week,
because I got another one as well. It's more of an athletic story, but yeah, I think that hopefully you have these moments in life that you look at and they become gems later on that you can hang on to. So hopefully that can help somebody else as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure the audience will as well. That was a really cool story.
Cool. Well, Derek, where can people find us on social media?
As always, thanks everybody for listening to the podcast. If you liked it, like, share, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Watch clips from the episodes as well as full episodes on YouTube. Subscribe to the newsletter by going to crosbyadvisory.com/contact. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Keep in mind that Crosby Advisory is a registered investment advisor in the state of Ohio, Texas, and Florida. At any time, you can request our forms ADV 2A and 2B, which go into the business practices and qualifications of Crosby Advisory. Today on this show, we mentioned specific securities, including Eli Lilly. Don't run out and buy it or sell it just because we talked about it on the show. Do your own homework. Make sure it's suitable for you. Keep in mind that investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.